Hello, everyone. So excited to be here. I'm all warmed up after coming off of Carl Dakin's show. So I'm ready to go. It's like being in the bullpen, just throwing some pitches until they call you into the mound. And today's show is Perseverance. If you don't know by now, and you probably should if you've been watching this show, we've got Jason Gerardo with us and Kelle. And couldn't ask for two finer people. Dave Snell may be joining us. But the word of the day is perseverance. And now we were just talking a little bit earlier about the holidays. That's a wonderful attribute to have, is to be able to persevere through it, primarily with the people who are associated with it, which is typically family and friends. So with that, why don't we get going with Kelle? Kelle can share a little bit about herself and first thoughts on perseverance.
Yeah, so good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are tuning in from. Always grateful to be here with y'all on Thursdays. It's just like I always say, it just always feels like a big hug to me, and I love it. And hopefully Dave will be able to join us too. And Carl, I'm so sorry I missed your show this morning. I will go back and watch it. I did see the post yesterday. I just forgot to get it on my calendar. But congratulations on a second show. Perseverance. As per every word that we have, this is going to be a fun conversation because it can go in so many different directions, as always, and we will definitely tweak it, I am sure. But perseverance, right, is getting through something even though we come across something that's difficult. Of course, being on LinkedIn and focusing on business, that applies to all of us. You know, business is tough. It's not easy. Some people make it look easy on social media, but I guarantee you they had to persevere through an awful lot of roadblocks along the way, regardless of what it is. And speaking of the holiday, and it's hard not to think of something funny on this, is, you know, we've all had those relatives or the person that's at one of our, you know, whether it's Thanksgiving dinner, Christmas dinner, whatever it is that you're celebrating, we have that one relative or guest that comes that we're like, man, I'm going to have to persevere through this meal to try to keep my tongue, in my mouth and not say anything that I couldn't, because we should follow the golden rule. Anything nice, keep it to yourself. So I'll leave it there for starters.
Well, that's a great start to a great show. And just as a addition, Carl also added a third show yesterday, which is all about Belize, and had one of his friends who has spent 33 years in that wonderful island sharing about the story of Belize. I think right now it's going to be a monthly show, might go to bi-weekly. But Carl's on a hot track to continue to be the Johnny Appleseed of live streaming. What's so cool about it is he gets them going, and then the people he starts with get to take him over. So, you know, that way you can have more, let's say, access and leverage without having too timely of a commitment that's hard to continue to support. So with that said, Jason, what's new and exciting and perseverance on your side?
All good stuff, and of course, always great to be here with you too. And making time in the schedule is always that, and that's very important we make time for the things that are important to us. And so with perseverance, you can make the time, or you can say, oh, I can't do it. It's very easy just to back away and say, oh, that's too hard. And on the same token, if something's continuously hard, you're going to want to look and see if you're doing the right thing, and so I'm going to start with this. And I was thinking about this morning, cracking myself up. So if those that don't know me, anyone that knows me personally or knows me even professionally on a one-on-one basis knows that humor is very high in my values. We say that if you're laughing, you're healing. So laughter is very important. I've always been a jokester. So I was thinking about perseverance this morning and about like what my take would be, and like from the mental health world and kind of knowing when is when. And it was reminded of someone asked in a post the other day that said, not about they're a therapist, and like not about mental health, just give some unsolicited advice, and it was kind of in a tongue-in-cheek way. And so what I shared there, I'll share here. You got to know when to hold them, you got to know when to fold them, you got to know when to walk away, you got to know when to run. And if those youngsters don't know, that's a Kenny Rogers song from the 70s. And if you do know that song, it's probably going to be stuck in your head today, because that's been stuck in my head. And you're welcome, or I'm sorry. But I think that's just, kind of, obviously tongue in cheek, but that speaks to it. Perseverance is not just keep hitting a wall. If you're hitting a wall, you got to look, is there a door? Or do I need to walk 3 feet to the right and walk around it? So as you see these obstacles, you have to observe them for what they are. And it's not just grinding. We got into a really bad place a couple of years before COVID, where it was the hustle culture, where everyone was just, well, you got to grind and you got to hustle and you got to and people were just burning themselves out. And it was like almost a badge of courage to be able, like, well, I'm killing myself to do this, make this happen. And those of us of a certain generation know that was kind of an expectation too. Back in the day, 16-hour days was kind of the norm. I used to tell my team, I jokingly, of course, and just off the record, I would say, like, these managers are working 14-hour days. And I'm like, hey, if it takes them 14 hours to get done what I get done in 8, that's on them, kind of jokingly. But, we have to pick and choose our battles. So on perseverance, I know it kind of went wide for this first comment, but be aware of what you're going up against. Acknowledge any obstacles, anything that gets in your way, acknowledge it for what it is, and then make an educated decision about your next steps. And I'll leave it there.
Yeah, those are great start-off thoughts and insights. And, what I visualize is somebody who's moving against a rainstorm that's blowing at them, and they take 2 steps forward and it pushes them 1 step back. But they know at a certain point they're going to pass that storm, or the storm will pass them.
Right.
And it takes discipline, it takes confidence, and it takes strength to deal with the worst while thinking the best of what you're going through, and more importantly, what you'll come out of, which will be the sunshine. But every time you quit, it makes it hard to start again. Or you get back in that situation and you decide, I can't do this. And what you're doing is dealing in absolutes versus, well, I know I can take 1 more step. I know I can catch my breath and take another step. And you get overwhelmed by adversity sometimes. It gets too loud, it gets too scary. And the question then becomes, or the situation is, the game is between you and yourself.
Right.
If it's not this, then it's that. Yeah. And why would you want to stop something that initially you started? Did you forget why you started? And I think the why is important. If you have to be somewhere, you figure a way. That whole saying, if there's a will, there's a way, or if your why is big enough, you'll figure out the how to.
Yeah.
And even if you don't make it, at least you gave it your best. And that's a starting point for the next thing. I know I've been picking up weight training, and the weight I'm lifting is not really weight, but it's a start. And in the beginning, things hurt. You're stressing things, you're straining some things, but the next day it doesn't hurt so bad. And by the 4th or 5th day, you're starting to feel a little bit of muscle, you're feeling a little strength, and you feel good about yourself. And one success through adversity will guide you through the next success through adversity. And if you can do things other people can't or won't, you're going to get ahead in the world over time. And it's that consistency, and also being your best friend. The last thing you want to do is, after you don't do something well, is to bully yourself for 5-10 minutes and telling yourself why you should have done better, or why this and why that. And I think through perseverance, you gain support. People will see you out there and want to help you in time. And people will start rooting for you. And I think shows like this expose us for who we truly are. And there's so many people who never get to know the people they're with over time, because no one's ever shared deeper or wider with those people. And once you open up, other people will open up to you, and they don't, well, you kind of qualify those people out, and it redirects you to the right course with the right people. And the ultimate goal is happiness, is at the end of the day, be proud, be happy, and feel blessed that you even had a chance. And I think that's where people miss out, is they look so high, they forget about how low things could have been or where they came from. And I think that's why adversity and perseverance makes so much difference, because some people are just survivors. Some people are unstoppable. They might take forever, but they're going to get there. And I know Kelle, who was an advocate for wheelchairs for warriors, sees so many of these stories
Yeah.
of people who they would have every reason not to do what they're doing or try to be what most people didn't think they could, but they won't be stopped, and someone who doesn't quit cannot lose. Might take them a long time, but they'll get there. And I think that should be an inspiration for ourselves, to see people who don't have real excuses, maybe because they're lazy or maybe because they don't care. Those don't justify it for the people who do. So anyways, Kelle, you're in a prime position to speak to that.
Yeah, so many good things. And I think my internet's a little glitchy, so apologies. We'll persevere through that. So many again, things that I could go off on, but what came to mind while Jason was speaking, because it is a matter of, like, there is a fine line between insanity and perseverance. When you're doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result, that truly is insanity. And you have to be able to step back from things and have introspection. And if you're stuck not knowing why do I keep doing this? Why does this keep happening to me? Talk to someone else, get a coach, do something. I mean, have someone to be like, what am I not seeing here?
Right.
Because I think we've all been there at some point in our life. I certainly have, more than once, where I'm like, no clue why I keep bumping up against this, but I need some help getting through this because I'm not seeing it clearly. Because we can get, very blinders on when we're so focused on our goal that we forget to take a step back and look. And one of the stories I thought about was, and I think it was Kevin Donaldson that shared this. He has a podcast called The Suffering Podcast, because life is about suffering. He's a retired police officer. Great podcast. Highly recommend it. But he was telling a story about a prairie fire, because the fact is, you can't outrun a prairie fire. It will eventually catch up to you and engulf you, because it just gets wider and bigger the more that it continues to burn. So the point of that is, you're eventually going to get caught and burn. So if you run through it to begin with, lean into it, you'll get a little singed, but you'll survive. And it's such a great visual, and I think a great story of when we are trying to, we come up against something, whether it is a roadblock in business, something in our personal life, whatever it is, we can't outrun it. It's not going to go anywhere. It will over time. It tends to get bigger and bigger and bigger because we exacerbate it with more things. But if we turn and run through it to begin with, yeah, it's going to be painful. Because if growth were easier, we'd all be doing it. But it's much less painful in the long run if you just lean into it. And that's hard sometimes. And that's a hard practice, to be like, man, I know this is going to suck, but I've got to embrace the suck and lean into it. And that's hard sometimes. And again, I think which is important to have, good people in your life that can be like, girl, you got this. I got you. And or being like, girl, I've had enough of you standing here doing nothing. I need to push you into this. We need to get you moving because you're stuck. So I think my whole point of that was just on the self-reflective. Like, that's so important. And you're right, Jason, the grind era of working 14, 16-hour days. And I'm with you. I said the same thing. I'm like, I don't need to be here 14 hours because I get done what I need to get done in the time that I need to be. And P.S., it is impossible for you to be effective and productive for 14 hours. Impossible. You can think you're doing more. People who, and I'll end on this point, we've all also been around those people who are always busy. I'm so
Right.
busy, I'm slammed.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, how can you always be busy? Because that's truly impossible. You're creating the busy or the vision of what appears to be chaos. Like there's so much happening, but it's like you're actually creating that noise. So that's another time to sit back and go like, are you really busy? Or are you creating your own busy in order to avoid what you need to be persevering through, perhaps? I'll leave it there.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well said. Jason.
So I just want to acknowledge we've got Carrie and Omar here. Good morning to both of you. It's always great to have you join in. And Carrie, of course, had his little joke and stuff, and I can't read it and concentrate, so I'll leave that for later. But it's great to have the community here as well. Two things I want to mention first off and foremost before I jump into it about Kelly's comments. So Kelly, I know you've been around veterans because you said embrace the suck. And for those that don't know, in the Marine Corps, we actually call the Marine Corps the suck in a loving way. It's called the suck, but it's embracing the suck is very much a veteran's military term, and you get used to it. You know, it's being comfortable being uncomfortable. That's the gist of it. But and then also, I can't praise enough the comments about being busy. I always say, don't be busy, be productive. You know, we've all been there where you got that person that you just got to walk around with a clipboard and look like you're walking fast, going somewhere, and everyone's like, "Oh, he's busy. Don't bother him or her." But you're not doing anything. You're walking around with a darn clipboard, you know. And we've all been there. You're like, "I want to take it easy today, so I'm just going to grab my clipboard and walk around really fast and look like I'm really like got thoughts in my brain." And then no one approaches you because they're like, "Oh, he's busy." You know, because of that mindset that we've had from the past about being busy. Be productive, get it done, take care of it, and move on. Talking about that, you know, perseverance. That's kind of the point, is picking your battles. You know, picking what you're going to work on and then work on it. And there's a balance. And here's the challenge. None of this is easy. You know, we get in have these conversations, and that's what I always try to bring to this conversation, is that we are not saying any of this is easy. We all have our personal struggles to this day. We've all had our major struggles in our pasts. You know, we've been there and we've done it. And like I said, and today I still, you know, I am starting year 4 of full-time in my business. So trust me, I'm learning every single day. I'm leaning into something new every single day. I'm blessed to have my wife as somebody that can be those second set of eyes that can say, well, have you seen this? Have you looked at that? You know, like Kelle was talking about, getting a coach, getting us, you know, a mentor or something like that. I'm blessed to have that inside to where she can look at what I'm doing and say, well, have you tried this? You know, have you done that? And I'm guilty too. You know, even what I do, I go down those rabbit holes. I go down that, well, I got some traction by doing this, so I'm going to keep doing that. And then, but it's not where you want to go. You know, I talked about, I think last time, the time before we all got together, about you keep walking down that same street and expecting different results. So walk down a different street, but don't stop walking down that street if there's bearing fruit. That's that balance. That's the thing. You know, I also shared a story, and I think we've talked about this before, but you know, the person that was looking for opals in Nevada, and he was digging and digging and digging, and he couldn't find anything. He found a couple smalls, but then he was like, and someone that I know, a friend of mine, knows him also, and showed up, and he's like, oh, you can have my spot, you can have my space, because you have to reserve your space. And they dug another like 3 feet and found this huge, amazing piece of wood with these gorgeous red fire opals in it. So that's the balance. Perseverance is a I don't want to say a game, but that's what came to mind, so I'll go with that. It's a game of looking at what you have and your results and balancing out, say, is my effort worth it in this, or should I look at something else? Because the opposite of perseverance is just giving up. Mm-hmm. And I feel like I can't do it. It's easy to sit on the couch and watch TV, but you know, my southern friends say you don't get lucky sitting in the shade. So you got to get out there and you got to live life. So that's what I want to bring to this, is that is that balance, and it's not easy. You hopefully learn through others' mistakes and their trials and tribulations, but you also have to learn from yours too. So that's why things like these LinkedIn Lives are amazing, because we get on here, we have a conversation, and if someone joins the community and they could say, hey, well, what are you talking about? That doesn't work for me. That's great. Let's continue that conversation. Let's talk and see how we can support you by supporting each other. So that's one of the blessings of these LinkedIn Lives.
Well, thank you, Jason. Those were well said words that have real meaning. I will go back to the audience and recognize Omar. Omar is a great guy, has multiple shows. I was actually honored to be on his show Saturday. One thing I love about Omar, he's innovative. I was actually talking to Carl earlier about Omar because Carl happened to be in the audience. And Omar came up with a show because it was his 40th birthday. And he invited 10 of the most inspiring people in his life. And I was honored to be included. I was the first speaker. And he had his kindergarten teacher follow me. So it was a potpourri of different people. And actually, Leslie Flowers was one of the 10 also. And it just shows you what you can do with your imagination and creativity. Instead of same old, hey, why not relate it to an event? It could be a birthday, it could be an opening, it could be just a life story. This is what happened to me. We're going to put a show on about it. And I know me and Kelly and Jason, especially me and Kelly, have covered so many subjects and so many words of the day. And I've done, like I say, about 900 of these. And I can't think of one that I didn't learn from, didn't grow from. But more importantly, it's because of the people I was with, not me and the show. Me and the show would have never made it 900 shows. But just knowing that Thursday is Kelly and Jason, or Tuesday is Beverly, I'm just so blessed to have access to these wonderful conversation and insights. Just like Jason meant about the suck. I never knew that, but I'll never forget that. You're putting little things in your file cabinet, and sometimes they come through. I was with Carl yesterday, and he mentioned something about a pig in a poke. And that was a saying I hadn't heard for a long time. And usually it goes like, why would you buy a pig in a poke? Which I didn't know what a poke is. I still have a question about it, but it's like something that's hidden and unforeseen, so you don't really know what you're buying because it's not visible. Here's Carrie. Carrie's a wonderful gentleman who continues to show up and support us. Why did the ginger man go back to school? To be a smart cookie. Well said. And Carrie has some experience with adversity. I'll share that with you. I know about that term for today is to persevere. I realize in life I've run from a lot of things in life, trying to confront things. I attempted to get through working in retail when I was injured, working in retail and tried, came up short. I could have tapped out on life like my mom did. I'm still here struggling to find that job. Until then, I still have to work at the church, cleaning. Well, I think that's so admirable because anything you can do puts you on the course of doing things. And I would never, one thing I've always said in the past, I've always learned more on the way down than I learned on the way up, because you get humbled. You find out that, hey, you can't take anything for granted. Even for the best of efforts, things may come up that you had no control over, but knocked you off your horse. And the key thing is not how many times you get knocked down, but how fast you get back up. That time between knockdown and getting up is critical, because if you stay down, you may never get up in the way you could have. And thank adversity for teaching you a hard lesson that maybe you might not have learned. And perseverance tells you that if this is hard for me, it's going to be hard for people like me. And if I can get through it, I'm going to be one level above those who won't or can't get through it. And then you're on safe ground again, and you feel pride. How many times have you ever been you brought somebody to a speaker, and just about the time they're about to say something so important to your guest, they decide, well, I have to go to the restroom, or I have to make a phone call. And they leave it. And boy, why weren't you here to hear this? This could have been life-changing for you. And also be excited. attitude is everything. When you go in a room and you're enthusiastic and excited, people don't even know why, but they get excited and enthusiastic. Be the spark plug, not the anchor. And know that you have an impact on others, whether you know it or not. And they do appreciate that you go the distance, that you always answer the bell. Showing up is 90% of winning at whatever you do. If you want to play baseball, show up at the baseball diamond every day, and eventually you'll learn what not to do. You'll feel more comfortable doing it, and you'll build community, which is also essential. Let me see. We've got a new name, Jaylee. Thank you for showing up. And here we have Dave. So, Dave, thank you for being here.
Hey, everybody. Sorry I'm so late. I'm still having internet troubles here in the house, but hopefully the cable company will fix that tomorrow. So,
well, you're preaching to the choir, because every day I don't have internet trouble, I'm happy.
Persevere.
Persevere. Yeah.
Carl's show, and I got there with another guest, and he said, well, two things. This is the first time both of my guests got here at least 3 minutes early. And the second thing, no one's having trouble with their audio or video. So you got to be thankful for what you don't have. So he came in at a prime time, Dave, talking about perseverance. And I know you've had a lot of experience in that area, just like ourselves. What would you like to say regarding perseverance?
I think he's frozen.
So we just proved the technological aspect. So
He's gobsmacked, and he doesn't know what to say.
As soon as you're back, Dave?
Yeah, I think so. I never lost you. You guys lost me. Again, technology. I'll just say, okay, we'll persevere, like you said. Look, there's always going to be troubles in life, and it's a test of our fortitude and our ability to recover from these troubles or tribulations, whatever you want to call them. Don, to your point, have I overcome some things in my life? Oh, yes, I have. I just will start with a quick story. Was the word that comes to my mind when I hear perseverance is tenacity. It's an internal adjective to say, what is it you're going to do, and what is it going to take to persevere? And it takes tenacity. Well, I think it was my senior year of college. I didn't think I was going to get a commission junior year of college. And when my dad had retired, the admiral who was his boss said, Dave, if there's anything you ever need, give me a call. Well, I gave him a call, but I never told my dad. And I got a good little butt chewing for that one, the protocols, et cetera. But I met with the admiral and my dad for lunch after I was commissioned about 3 or 4 years later. And the one word he said to me was, never lose your tenacity. That is what's going to get you through, because he was essentially saying you took a lot of balls and guts to call me directly as a lowly midshipman to call a 2-star admiral without letting your father know. But if you had the gall to do that, you will have the gall to do whatever it takes to get through whatever comes your way. Now, I've forgotten that phrase a couple of times through my life, and I had some low points. And yet, when I've persevered and gotten through it, I've come back and said, wow, Admiral Jim McFarland was onto something. My tenacity got me through. Mm-hmm. Always go back to him at that lunch when he told me to always remember tenacity.
Well, that's valuable. And everybody loves to hear context to something, right? And having a story behind it, having an experience behind it, hopefully motivate somebody to make that uncomfortable, because it wouldn't be perseverance if it was easy and it was comfortable, right? It's the times that you get knocked down, pushed back, made to feel less than what you are, and you pick yourself up and get back in the game, and then feel good just because you did. Winning is not the answer. Playing is the answer, and playing consistently. There's teams that look at Colorado was the worst team in the country 2 years ago at 1-11. And now they're looking at a bowl game. Why? They changed leadership. They changed personnel. And now everything changed. So it wasn't the challenge. It was how people address the challenge that makes all the difference between winning and losing and being a player. How many people play football and never reached NFL? Probably about 99.99%. Doesn't mean they're not trying, doesn't mean they're not enjoying and having fun. And it's also knowing you're never going to hit first place, but you play just as hard as if you would. You know, those people who do these marathons, I know Dave's one of them. I don't see anybody, you know, yelling at the last person who crossed the finish line, you know, because they did it, you know, and maybe not as fast, maybe not as well, but they did it. And I think doing it gives you pride to say, I participated, or I played a small role in a big situation. So Kelle, your turn.
I mean, how would we ever, or I should say, have we ever, when we hear somebody say, I ran a marathon, our first thing isn't to go like, oh, what place did you come in? It's just immediate, like, dang, like that's
it's usually, did you do it on purpose?
Did you mean to do that? Who are you running from? So I think that's a fascinating thing, right? Because you're absolutely right, Don. We're not going, you know, oh, well, you came in last, you suck. We have such praise for people who accomplish such a feat, because that is not for everyone. That's not something on my bucket list. I've never been a runner. I never enjoyed it, just not my thing. And now my body wouldn't be able to handle it anyways. But I love that you brought in the word tenacity. And I couldn't help but think, you know, when I look back at younger me in the business world, and that was exactly what I was tenacious. But I was also very naive. I didn't know better. I just knew like I wanted to achieve certain things, and you know, I was going to make it happen come hell or high water. And what happens over time is we get jaded, right? Because then reality comes into the picture, and it's like, ooh, that actually kind of, what do you mean you're going to smack me down and I can't do that now? And then we get afraid, and then fear starts taking over, and our tenacity gets dimmed. And because we sit in a space of fear, like, ooh, I'm not going to try that again because that was painful. Because like Jason, when you were saying about, I think the opal example is so good, because it's like, hey, you were still bearing fruit. Why did you end? Why did you stop? You stopped because of something. Something happened along the way, and you were sitting in a space of fear, whether it was like, I'm just tired. I don't want to do this anymore. I felt that way many times in my life of, you know, again, Jason, your other point, to give up is easy, in the sense of I've lived in a space where I understood that I could stay in bed and go nowhere and do nothing, and that would be easy. What's hard is to get up, get dressed, go out and face the world and try to smile at someone. That takes effort. And so it is all a matter of, all right, do I need to just take a break and brush myself off and then rethink and restart? Or like Jason said, do I need to build a different door? Do I need to walk down a different street? But fear, and as long as we're alive, and I think people think that we're going to achieve this place of where all of a sudden everything is going to be amazing. And it is, but it's not always going to be that way, because we're living. And there will be times that are going to be difficult. That's just part of life, period. And accepting that, and again, to go to your point, Dawn, is we get up faster. I think the more experience we get, it's like, man, I don't want to do this. This is going to suck, but I'm going to do it because I want to get it over with. Because I know what prolonging something does. I've lived that too, and it's terrible. And then you look back and go, man, why didn't I do this sooner? You know, I know no one that has pushed through or persevered through a hard time in life, or a hard thing in business, or ending a relationship, whatever it is, and have gotten to the other side and said, man, I wish I would have waited another day before I did this. So I'll leave it there this time.
Jason?
Yeah, so two things come to mind, and one I wrote down earlier, and I think it's very important about perseverance, is gratitude. Be grateful for where you're at, grateful for what you've achieved. And, you know, Kelle talking about making those small achievements every day, and just being like, man, I did it. I did that one thing. And that's the step that you build on, whether you want to talk about building bricks, building a house, or, taking step to step, however, whatever metaphor, whatever analogy you want to use. But being grateful for what you do have and what you've accomplished and acknowledging that is a huge step. Because if you can say, you know what, I've done this much and I can do more. Dan Millman says that, the paradox of life is that you're perfect just as you are, and you're going to get better. So it's like, but taking those steps every day. And then within that also, something Kelly said that triggered something for me or brought something up for me is that surround yourself with support. Have people that are in your camp, people that'll say, when you might not be able to see it, they're like, hey Jay, you're doing great. You got this. Or, well, what are you doing? Okay, is that working out for you? Whatever, so surrounding yourself with that. Not to make it a military show, but now that I got Dave here with me too, and Kelly, obviously you work with veterans, and I'll mention this. The thing that you learn, and this is the secret sauce, the thing that you learn in the military is that there is no option. When I had to rappel off that 90-foot tower as a 17-year-old child, there was no option. I was going off that 90-foot tower. That was it. Okay. And then I did it, and I was like, I did it, or jumping off the, 10 or 12-foot tower into a 12-foot deep pool with a 60-pound pack on my back. Do what? No option. Do it. Mm-hmm. And it instills that confidence in you. And that's what we're talking about, perseverance. As you take these steps and you're grateful for what you have achieved, you can see that there is more, and you can see, I can keep going. I can do this. So having those people that are supporting you, having that internal feeling of gratitude that I've achieved a lot and I can achieve more, I think that sets you up for just amazing things in your life.
Absolutely. And that saying, which is pretty commonplace, is burn the boats, right? When a conquering navy would go to another continent or country, the general or the admiral would burn the boats, and he would say to everybody, you have no choice, either win or perish. There is no going back. And the other thing I think that's so important is knowing yourself and telling yourself, I've been through worse, right? And I've gotten through worse. I can get through this. And you may not know how, you may not know when, and you may not know who, but you know that you can do anything if you put your mind to it and you don't quit. Now you can pause. You can say, I'm overwhelmed. I'm not going to make a rash decision, which is I'm out of here. How many people explode in an emotional moment and then can never go back to where they were? And it's easier to say, pause, take a break, get some rest, come back tomorrow, try it again. And usually, we talked about it early in the show with people working 14-hour days, making themselves look good without really doing much. And I had a pretty much cardinal rule that at 5 o'clock, everybody had to leave, and I had a pretty big office. I had about 70 people working in that building at one time. And everybody knew at 5 o'clock, you got to go home. Why? You got family. You got food on the stove. And your family is going to appreciate the boss for saying, you got to get home, or you can't miss that Little League game. And those are benefits that don't cost you much, and they come back fresher, right? If they have to fight a war at home and a war at work, they're exhausted. And now they have to choose, and usually they have to make a living, right? But if someone's a little bit more thoughtful, because I wanted to be home with my family at dinner time, so why would I be different? We never had employee names on parking spaces. Everybody took their trash to the trash bin themselves. Everybody grab a vacuum and do their own little floor. And it was something that, when you do what you say you want other people to do, it's far more convincing and empowering than telling people, do what I say, not what I do. I think rewarding people and showing that this has value, that people's lives have value. And where you make out is you don't have to deal with turnover. You don't have to deal with retention issues. You don't have to do with training issues. And what comes around goes around. Nothing gets taken for granted over time. And if you're really, really good to people in an authentic way, they feel an obligation in some way to return the favor, even if it's just a great thank you or I appreciate it. And then I would always have a monthly bowling event, and everybody was invited. All the family, all the friends, and I talked to people's grandparents and parents and uncles. And they would always come up to me, thank you so much for helping Doug out and giving him a position. And he was a kid who actually had a master's degree, but he had all kinds of ADHD issues, and people wouldn't look beyond it. And he was the hardest working person I ever saw, cared so much about everything, and it instilled it in others, you know? And when you see bravery or you see loyalty at the highest level, that's something that you can't put on a balance sheet. You know, that's something that really is important. But you have to be the one to see it, not the one to take advantage of it. Because how you bring people in, how you lead people is how they're going to bring people in and lead people, because that's how it was done for them. And, you know, I think we all have a belief and a hope for a better world for everybody, an easier world. And a lot of times it is that what me and Kelle have talked about in the past, smiling a little bit more, reaching out and taking the time to acknowledge and recognize people. And that's persevering. It's not just going through the tough times, it's helping other people go through the tough times. And you're participating in their perseverance. And that other saying we started early on the show, when we started, was if you can't do it, could we do it?
Mm-hmm.
Right? If you're 90% away, is there a way I can get you 10% so you can get over the hump, just like Dave reached out? And, you know, I got to commend Dave, because a lot of people would say that's a great idea, and then within 2 minutes give themselves 10 reasons why it's not anymore.
Oh, I got them. Don't worry.
You know, and I think that's the key, is once it's in your mind, do it. Once you feel like saying something, say it, because eventually you'll say, oh, well, maybe I'm a little too forward. Maybe I should lighten it up, and maybe I shouldn't bring love into my conversation. You know, maybe I'll be looked at like this. And that's really turning things around on yourself and against yourself, because you minimize your opportunities. You know, and I know Carrie says here, I am always grateful waking up another day. We're not guaranteed the next day.
Amen to that.
You know, and that's so true. And whatever you have, be thankful for it, you know, because what are the things you might not have? And, you know, I remember being at an Agmandino speech. And if you don't know him, you should. He's a wonderful personal development guy who was down on his luck, tells the story of, think of a guy in Cleveland during a snowstorm. He's looking out from the outside of a pawn shop, and he goes in and buys a gun and one bullet, with the whole intention of going to his little apartment. He just lost his family. He was an alcoholic, didn't see any hope, and he couldn't even pull the trigger. And it made him feel worse. He said, I can't even do this right. And then somehow he wrote something, and the founder of Amway saw it. There was a little pamphlet. And he read it on a plane, and he thought so much of it that he got in touch with Og, and he made copies and sent it to the whole Amway organization. And from there, Og got a position in a newspaper and then went on to speaking. And when he was on the stage that day, and it was the last speech he ever made, no one knew he had a pretty bad form of cancer. He knew it, but he never let on to it. And he said to everybody, if you don't think life is worth living, do yourself a favor, pick up a newspaper. But please don't read the front page, or that might even give you more reason to split. Go to the obituaries and ask yourself, who wouldn't trade places with you right now? And then he said one more thing. He says, raise your hand if you're a millionaire. And this is like 30 years ago. And a couple hands raised up, and he said, I'll prove it to you that you're all worth millions. And he says, anybody want to tell me, would you give your eyes for $1 million? Would you give your legs? Would you give your hearing? I mean, how many millions are you worth? And it really put things in perspective. And I think when we're talking about perseverance, you have to think of what is the perspective I need here? Mm. And the other thing is, if people depend on you, it's easier to persevere because it's not about you. You know, if one of your kids need medicine, you're never going to give up until you get that for that child. You know, there was this one other example of somebody, another personal development speaker, who said, well, if on a windy day, someone tied a rope between two windows on opposite sides of the building on the 50th floor, and someone says there's a couple $1,000 waiting for you, you'd say, I'm not going to go through that exercise on that rope in a windy day. But if your kid was perched on the other side of the building on the, it would be lickety split, right? And I think that's so important. And I think to that point, what I advise people who want to gain more perseverance is learn more, read more, get inspired more by teachings, but by anything that can change your attitude to say, you know, I'm obligated. To the point of I don't have a choice. It's play or not survive. That's so important. So anyway, he's got on a high horse there, but really reinforces it. And, you know, I love that we can get so animated and excited. You know, it brings back that one saying by Pontiac, which says, we build excitement. And I think if you can build excitement, and they did, they're no longer in business, but they were an exciting company with really exciting cars. So Kelly.
I mean, oh my gosh, so much there. Again, it was hard not to think of, because of course, I mean, I'm working with Wheelchairs for Warriors. I am around veterans all the time and first responders, and hearing stories of perseverance. And I will say, I think that's what's so important about having conversations about things, because even though I can't relate to what it's like to be in the military, I didn't serve, I don't know. But I can hear a story. That's how Dave and I became friends. He was on my show. And is hearing it, we learn something though, even though I don't understand. And actually the word last week that we all had was empathy, is we have empathy and compassion for one another. And that does help us, even if it is a scenario that is completely not my life, because it's not my life. It puts into perspective things like, man, got through some really rough stuff. And it helps you kind of remind yourself of, you know, and I say this a lot and probably not often enough is, and have to remind myself of this, is we've survived 100% of our bad days. And that's a pretty darn good track record. And knowing at those times when things are terrible, and knowing that like, this isn't going to last forever. It's temporary. But it's hard sometimes. I've definitely been in places where I didn't think, it was like, there's no way I can do this anymore. Like, I'm done. I'm tapping out. And I think having that conversation for folks helps them also see like, gosh, I'm not the only one that's felt that way. Because there's so much taboo and stigma around certain conversations, and they shouldn't be. We're all human beings. We all struggle. We all screw up. We all have persevered through something. I look back and I've had people say to me in my life, I can't imagine going through what you went through. I'd never be able to do that. I said, you know what though? If you would have told me I was going to have to go through what I went through, I'd have said, oh, hell no. Excuse me. But I would have been like, no way. There's no way I can do that. But you don't have a choice. It's kind of like, you know, Jason, you talking about being on that 90-story building or whatever it is. You have to do it. When you're presented with something in life, there is no choice. I didn't have a choice that my dad didn't come home one day. And I had to deal with that. There was no choice. Turning away from it wouldn't have made it go away. it would have honestly, and it did for a period of time because I didn't know how to deal with it. It was way too much at one time. But knowing I needed to reach out to someone else and be like, I need help getting through this because I don't understand my feelings. I don't understand how to navigate this. And what does that look like for me going forward? And just because I've gone through tragedy, and I think this is an important reminder, is my family all went through the same thing. All three of us dealt with it extremely different, because our paths to how we deal with grief, anger, sadness, all the things are so different. And I guess I want to say that because we can look for others and listen to others' stories for inspiration, but we can't judge ourselves based on their experience either, because we haven't lived it the exact same. I'll leave it there, Jason, because I feel like you need to say something there.
Dave?
Yeah, I'm going to go back. I mean, first I'll say, Kelly, that was absolutely right. I mean, I can't agree with you more. I'll go back to, Jason's example of you have to do it, and the experience of, the 90-foot wall, the 10-meter into the pool with the 60-pound ruck, and these things that we have to do. It goes to the training. I'm going to make a parallel here very quickly. I know we're running up on the hour. Is, the military training we do, it's not exactly what we're going to have to deal with in combat or on the ship or in an aircraft, but it's prepping you for, okay, if I've dealt with it once and I've dealt with it numerous times, I can deal with the worst case scenario. And the same thing in life. We have seen, and I bring this up because I'm reminded of a quote I heard this week was, how many kids do you see with casts anymore? People aren't going through these experiences as much. And not necessarily that I want a kid to break his bone, but experiencing something that is going to help them later in life when they have to deal with these worst case scenarios. Yeah. They're not being challenged enough. And we're seeing struggles from that part of life. Yes, we can take lessons from every little thing we've had to persevere through. And yet life can throw a lot at us very quickly. Like you said, Kelly, with losing your father, things that have happened to all of us. We need to have these life experiences. Mm-hmm. And sitting in front of a computer, ironically, like we're doing now, for a teenager or a single kid is not the same experience that we had as kids to let us deal with these challenges and traumas. And it's a very big struggle that I think on a greater societal issue. I'm going way deep here, maybe, I don't know, deeper than I should have, but it just brought to mind that when you were talking about that, Jason. And lastly, I'll say two things real quick. Dan Millman, I'm glad you brought him up, Jason, because I can't count the number of times I've read his books or listened to his podcast, or not podcast, but to his books or other scenarios and speeches he's given. That guy is a national treasure. You have to listen to him very deeply to get some of the messages, but he expresses himself very well to say, here are the things you should be taking away from life and experiencing and enjoying. And I enjoy listening to his books. And then somebody else made a comment. I'll just go with the last anecdotal story I think I've mentioned before, of one of my nephews mentioning to an uncle, hey, when I grow up, I want to be just like you. And I want this last result, but they've never had to deal with all the stuff he had to have the nice house and the pool and the bar in the basement and the 3-car garage, whatever it was. And they've never had to deal with all the things or seen what he went through to make the money to afford that. Again, that's that anecdote of, persevering through things. It's not the end result that we should be searching for. It's the journey that gives us the lessons to let us get to when we leave, if that makes sense.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. And I'll send it over to Jason. I know we missed the rotation a little bit, but
yeah, I wanted to give Dave extra time too. He came in a little bit late, so I'm glad.
No worries.
And good stuff, Dave, as always. A couple points I want to touch on that everyone said, and I'll try to wrap it up because we are once again on the hour. Shifting to the second hour. Oh no, we can't do that. Something that Don was talking about, if it's your child or someone you love and doing it for, and I wrote down, if for others, why not for you?
I love that.
Yep.
Why we're all important, we're all that, and sometimes we push away that's just me. I'm just Jason. No one's just. We're all amazing people. We all deserve the best. We all deserve that consideration. So give yourself that consideration first and foremost, because if you're not around, you can't help anyone. So let's start there. And then Kelly was talking about comparison, and it's a big deal. And like I said, that could take us definitely into the second hour, definitely with my veteran brothers and sisters. But I wrote down comparison. The saying is comparison is a thief of joy, but I wrote down comparison is a thief of motivation. Because if you look at, well, this person, that, and it's like, then you're like, well, and you might lose your motivation. Don't compare yourself. Your life is your life. Live your life fully and completely, and be you, and just revel in it. And then the last thing, and I know short time here, but I want to share this. Jim Rome. Jim Rome's an amazing, he's passed, but he was a writer and a speaker and all that. Great person. He actually trained Tony Robbins, one of his main mentors. And Tony is Tony. I'm not a fan of Tony, but I know that he's really good at what he does. But I watched a class the other day from Jim Rohn, and I want to leave you with these 5 things. He says, every morning you start your day, start with these 5 things. Tell yourself these things. Number 1, today I choose to be positive. Just start there. Number 2, I am grateful for all that I have. Number 3, I am capable of achieving great things. 4, here it is, perseverance. I embrace challenges as opportunities for growth. And 5, I take action towards my goals every day. And that's it.
Love it.
Start your morning every day with that. You'll persevere through anything.
Amen.
Well, that's just terrific, and it's so true. And Harvey happens to stop by. So nice of Harvey. One of my biggest inspirations is Harvey's perseverance, diligence, hard work, and discipline that has really continued to elevate and skyrocket him to, I guarantee you, years to come, you'll look at Harvey and say, wow. But the ones who knew him at the beginning will understand why. Hey, Jason, Dave, Kelly, and Don. Sorry I'm late. Been a crazy busy day. Wanted to join and say hi before my show. Hope to catch up soon. And if you have a chance after this show, I would definitely propose watching Harvey's show. He has always got great guests and great information. Thank you, Harvey. To close up, I know I actually knew Jim Rohn very well. And we're in the same opportunity in the 90s, and I would meet with them about every 3 months. Wow. And along with Brian Tracy and all these people. It was called the People's Network. It was a 24/7 satellite program just for personal development. Wow. And, I've also been around people that you'd have to pinch yourself to say I'm in the presence of. But what you find out, these people put their pants on one leg at a time, just like you. When you actually sit down and talk with them, they're talking about, I got to get a haircut tomorrow. My kid's got to go to the dentist. They're not talking these great, phenomenal things. They're just people. And if you understand, everybody's a person to begin with. And there is no overnight success that lasts. Everybody took 10 or 20 years to get there. And one of the ways is listen to some autobiographies. Listen to some people you really admire and find out where they started from, what they dealt with. And you know what? They're still dealing with it. And in essence, sometimes stardom makes it even harder. I was listening to Al Pacino's autobiography. And he said, one of the saddest parts of being who I am is you can never eat at a restaurant alone. Before you know it, everybody's coming up to you for an autograph or saying, can you say what you said in The Godfather, or all of those things. and that's where you have to take pride is I'm so lucky for what I don't have, because success comes with a lot of other baggage and you can't get rid of it. You can stay an unknown and still do great things. But once you step up and out in the spotlight, there's people, critics who want to tear you down, do things. And you wonder, is this fair? And you know what? Anytime you think, is it fair or not, you're thinking the wrong way. Because it's not meant to be fair. Who's going to make it equal to anybody? But it's up to you to give yourself some, put your thumb on the scale for yourself. Find things, compliment yourself that you were hoping somebody else would. And if they won't do it for me, I'll do it for myself. You know, there's a certain point where you don't wait, you just do. You know, I'm tired of waiting. I'm tired of depending on somebody else. And the more self-sufficient you are, the more independent you are, the more you can persevere. If in the back of your mind it's like, well, I'm staying out too late, no one's going to like that, I'll leave early just so I satisfy people. And it's usually people who don't communicate clearly. You know, they'll do dumb things before they'll say smart things, you know, and get permission. You know, a lot of people would ask for forgiveness instead of permission and just do it anyways. And there's something inside of you, especially what's called a heart, that is more true than your brain. And, you know, when it says, this isn't right, you know, this just isn't what I am and who I'm supposed to be. And you walk away from situations. How many people had wonderful opportunities with lots of money and just says, I can't do that. And until you're that person, because I know a lot of people will say, well, no matter how much they gave me, I wouldn't take it until you're offered it, you know, and then you're invested. You know, and no one's going to give it to you. You can be proud like that. But anyways, like every other show, and there used to be shows I remember early on, we would go an hour and 40 minutes. We'd go forever. And they were great because it just lasted. But I'll give everybody consideration today to get on with their day and hopefully take a lot of what we talked about today and put it into action and come back and tell us about it either on another show. And I can speak for all of us. If there is something that you want to talk about that's relevant, I'm sure we're all open to a 15-minute call. Reach out to us. That's why we're here. I'll end it with Kelly's wonderful saying that puts me on the best of my day. Kelle.
Yeah, so persevere through all things because we can all do it. And like to go on your saying, Dawn, if you can't do it, maybe we can do it. And remember, we are the ripple effect of all of those around us, our loved ones, our families, our friends. So please do be that light today and go out and shine so bright that others can't help but shine too.
Never get tired of that. I want to thank Dave, want to thank Jason, always thank Kelle, thank the audience, and thank the universe for giving us this wonderful opportunity to continue to share with you. So with that said, look forward to coming back next Thursday and doing it all again.